as I'm presenting here, I will present you a paper titled Contextuality in Architecture and Zero Energy Buildings. It was done in the Faculty of Architecture in the University of Belgrade, a Department of Urbanism, and it was done in collaboration between three authors, my colleagues Professor Eva Vaništa Lazarević and my young colleague Filip Petrović, who is a PhD student at Faculty of Architecture, and he is here today with me. I will start with the topic of contextual design as a concept that new projects should fit into their context of all settings, and it has been and it is a major planning principle in contemporary architecture. There are many different studies that are focused on determining the principle of building in context, and these principles or guidance in form of recommendation, resolution, declaration or statements were drafted and adopted firstly by international organizations such as UNESCO and ICOMOS. The variety of these design guidelines are showing us that there are not simple rules for achieving quality of design, although a clear and coherent relationship between all parts of new buildings to the whole, as well as to their surrounding, is essential. These principles are mainly about the compatibility of new buildings with all structures through evaluating the features, the size, the scale, proportions, massing, etc. And they are doing in order to protect the integrity of the property and its environment. So, following the stated views about the architecture and the context, we build a new method and framework for evaluation of the relation of established and that relation is established at the University of Belgrade Faculty of Architecture on special design elective course titled Architecture in Context that is realized at the Faculty of Architecture during a few years ago. The research, this is the research that is a little bit unique for this kind of conference because it is not directly related to the analysis of the zero energy buildings, but the idea of the paper is to discuss to what extent the construction of the new buildings adheres to a certain principle in case physical, which is also be interpreted in terms of energy efficient construction. So that means that we can easily distinguish a physical context which consists of architectural and urban one, new in all settlements, segment and urban recycling method. On the other hand, we have diverse aspects throughout we build the process in historical, economical, political and other ways, so on in approach to the context as a term. So, for the purpose of this research that I present here, it was used an evaluation procedure that contained new method and framework that includes 6 pairs of criteria. First is order and unity, then is ratio and proportion, then scale and hierarchy, symmetry and rhythm, detail and texture, and then harmony and beauty. These pairs of criteria are in some kind of hierarchical relationship where it was expected that the criteria of higher order be met by achievement of these lower. So every criteria have its own indicators, like order and unity has indicators like vertical regulation, horizontal regulation, the proportion of the building on the plot, etc. Then ratio and proportion has 7 indicators, which include street profile, building dimensions, ratio of the buildings, etc. Scale and hierarchy had indicators like building size, element size, until the transparency of the ground floor, transparency of the buildings, the importance of the public space where the building is situated, etc. Then symmetry and rhythm had indicators like object distance from the axis of the street, then street cross-section, character and forms of the roofs, and etc. Then details and textures has indicators like reflection, transparency, treatment of the surface, perception, distance, etc. And then harmony and beauty as the highest criteria that could be developed is it's 10 indicators that include objects distance from the axis of the street, and object geometry, street cross-section, etc. So, presented framework is used for evaluation of the new buildings built after the 2000 at the territory of the city municipality of Vračar as one of the central and famous area at the city of Belgrade. The research, as I said, was done at the University of Belgrade Faculty of Architecture with students at Master and PhD course Architecture in Context, and it was consisted of 2 parts that were taking place consecutively. First part of the research was realized with students of Master course who had the task to carry out detailed description of an evaluation by following the criteria-based structure of the research. And for the purpose of those 22 buildings constructed after 2000 on the territory of, and for this purpose, 22 buildings was identified and at the mentioned territory. Case studies has been done on the basis of made catalog sheets that is presented in this slide, and accordingly for each 22 object is made a mini catalog where textual and graphical part of the evaluation is presented. On the segment of this catalog, in the down right part of the catalog, this is part used for rating according to the principle that count the number of the marked squares correspond to the value at a given pair of criteria. So, as I said, the second phase of the research included the process of the catalog of each processing of the catalog of each object in order to create a synthesized overview of the results regarding to the entire territory of the city municipality Vračar. The results of the conducted research are presented according to the selected pair of criteria, following the structure of general description, evaluation of the relationship of the architecture and the context of 22 buildings. So, the results include 6 segments that are related to the criteria. At the first pair of the criteria, order and unity, we conclude that the build structure has a large number of styles units following regulation of surrounding structure, both horizontal and vertical adjustments. Then the new facility introduced new materials, colors and texture as such fit into the environment and the broader context. Then analyze objects have an established relationship with buildings in immediate neighborhood based on the significance and style characteristic. And then there are objects that stand out as compared to the surrounding objects, which could be explained as a visual discontinuity. As the final conclusion at this criteria, that we define that among the 22 analyzed objects, the most of them, 9 buildings, are rated with a score 4. On the other side, in terms of order and unity, Vračar territory is rated with average scores of 3.22. In regard to ratio and proportions, observed building structures at the territory is diversified, given that only objects in sequence and the same type have continuity of relationship and proportions, which is not often the case with the new buildings. If we look at the overall build structure, objects are aligned with the height regulation while width of the plots change. Modularity, which is observed at the adjacent buildings, is not applied to the new objects, and in order to obtain that relationship and the proportion, modular division and segments remain only to the openings and transparent parts of the new buildings. So, in regard to this couple of criteria, the result shows that the most of the buildings are rated with score 3 and the average rate is 3.18. Then, in regard to the scale and hierarchy, observed building structure represent variation in height and front and mismatch of old and new architecture. The main details of the facade are overemphasized in order to relieve the transparency of objects. Then the details also occur on the new buildings that stand out from the context, and the difference of the new buildings is seen in the width in the front facade, where objects occupy the entire width of the plot, which result the formation of the stately fronts along the street. This pair of criteria, which was recorded, it was recorded as the lowest average score of 3.14. None of the selected buildings not earn the top rating among the 22. Not earning the top rating, and among the 22 analyzed objects, the most of them are rated with score 3. Then, in accordance with the symmetry and rhythm, analyzed building structure is built in its entirely asymmetrical way. Individual units have symmetry that emphasizes the main structure of the buildings, while the facade has established a dynamic rhythm between fully and empty parts of the structure. Change in height of buildings give an authentic rhythm of the streets of Vračar, where different objects can be found not only by the type but also by the purpose. In regard to these criteria, the results show that the most buildings, 13, are rated with score 4 and the average rate is 3.32. Then we have detail and texture, and the most of we conclude that there is a use of different materials and light on the facades. In relation to this, the most of the buildings, regardless of whether they are old or new, are different. This gives various opportunities to architects of upcoming facilities to highlight their projects, and details are prominent, either contrasting large surfaces and strikes or as mosaic facade structures. The most of the buildings are rated with the score 3, but the couple of criteria were noticed, 3 objects rated with a maximum score of 5. On the other side, in the term of detail and texture, Vračar territory is rated with also with average scores of 3.32. And the final couple of criteria, harmony and beauty, as the most higher criteria in the domain of architecture and design, we concluded that the harmony and beauty of the buildings constructed in Vračar after 2000 is reflected in the variety, quality, finish, and the tendency to allocate each object. When these indicators look of context, then we see that the observed objects are only partially integrated and that they do not follow literally all area requirements placed on the street and block level. In regards to this couple of criteria, results show that the most of buildings, 9, are rated with score 4, and then the average rate is 3.32. As some kind of final conclusion in the domain of result, the highest compliance is achieved in the domain of 3 highly ranked pair of criteria, which is not expected in this kind of research: symmetry and rhythm, detail and texture, and harmony and beauty, because their average rate is 3.32. But the other first defined couple of criteria are a little bit had a little bit different, smaller scores. Then, if we follow the maximum number of the particular score, the best rate was reached in relation to the symmetry and rhythm, because there are 13 buildings rated with score 4. We can see here and this part. So, as some kind of conclusion, as I said at the beginning, this is not directly related to the energy efficiency and construction, but we can make some indirect conclusion, because as we follow the results of that analysis encompassing the buildings built after the 2000 and the municipality Vračar, we observe that there are plenty of facilities incorporated into the environment in an existing lot of already current physical structure, which are less or more successfully inserted in the study area. Then the most of the buildings are designed and built in respect to the planning regulation and recommendation. This is the only framework and that is respected, because they're some kind of, not some kind, they're just a legal set of requirements. But when we looking at some soft elements like details, textures, rhythm, and hierarchy that does not give, which does not give any suggestion on some kind of legislative form that is not respected in a domain that we expected. Having in mind the obtained result that indicate that we don't support that certain fine and suitable construction principle, the contractuals, we conclude that the contractors will rarely independently decide of energy efficiency construction. So in order to achieve that improvement in this domain, it is necessary to educate citizens about the benefits of such building and to introduce new planning measures and recommendations which the contractors had to adhere to. So thank you very much for your attention.